Kishor. Having read Dr. Pratihari's abstract, I was aware that certainly he would do country by country relation. So I thought something different I should do, probably flag some issues that can actually make things more interesting. There's one question that always troubles me, as well as my students also keep asking me, that why on earth anything and everything that's happening in the world, any part of the world, they would discuss China. So my simple answer to them used to be always that Chinese have captured the mind space too. So that's one of the reasons why it is. So my whole the propositions that I'm trying to take is from this particular topic. This is my title itself, actually. So I borrowed the title. That's the reason I have put them under the quote. It's black cat, white cat. As long as it catches mice, it's a good cat. Probably most of you are aware who said this. Is it Deng Xiaoping? So I'm starting with that to say that what is China up to. So probably I'll take you through a few propositions, and then I'll also make some comments. Probably the very purpose is to provoke and bring out new thinking, or probably if I can generate something that can go as part of the body of knowledge. That's the idea behind. The propositions that I'm saying is the first one being sovereignty of a nation to pursue their strategic autonomy in foreign policy is primordial in the international order, which is a well-known fact. Economic interdependence has been driving nation states and their national interests to pursue robust economic programs. Any noble model of governance, I mean to say the models that are proposed by the West, which says of good governance, which says about democracy, which talks about everything that's possible on this earth, and everything that emerges from the West is seen as the most positive thing. So any noble model of governance existing in the present international order requires fulfillment of basic needs as a prerequisite. I mean to just say that what we say in more colloquial language, that you cannot have thinking on the God, or you cannot make people to do bhajan without giving bhojan. So that's what I simply mean to say. So you cannot impose the models of your good governance or noble models without giving them those prerequisites, those basic needs of the human beings. Countries in the 21st century requiring support want win-win cooperation. Now that's the statement that I'm going to take forward in terms of talking something about Africa. To the best of the amount, whatever literature that I have read through, so there are two things that have come out why China gives aid. One is strategic diplomacy, and other one is commercial benefit connected to its quote-unquote peaceful rights. In 2004, Joshua Cooper Ramo, former editor of the Time magazine, he actually coined this particular word called Beijing consensus. He just spoke about the layers that have come in terms of what exactly China is trying to engage and its development ideas. He said that this is something that exactly came as a fitting reply to the failed model called Washington consensus. Apparently, most of you are aware, we had Professor Zaleski coming from Poland who said that even being a European nation, which is much closer to United States, was not at all happy because this was a model which was built somewhere else, and then they tried fitting it in there. So Washington consensus did not go well with, for which Beijing consensus came as a model that they wanted to talk in realpolitik. There are two ways of looking at China's success that I tried bringing in terms of world response. There are a group of countries which have capacity to resist, but they are indulging in criticizing due to their diminishing presence in Africa. And the second is, some are disgusted with the lost opportunity, what we also largely call as having missed the bus, and doubtful of their capacity to do anything Africa. So they themselves do not have that a positive confidence in them that they can do something and they can get on. Same like the Japanese, because I think many of you are also aware, the Japanese presence in Africa, even they too believed for a long time, even for their own country, that the best solution to conflict and instability is sustained economic development. As a strategy, China avoids paternalism often used to characterize aid from the West. The Ugandan president, Yoweri Museveni, once said, I have a real problem with this paternalistic arrangement of the so-called donor and beggar relationship. He simply said that this is disgusting. Why do you people see us that we are deprived souls and we always look up to you people like your gods and we have to receive it? So that speaks volumes coming from the political class in Africa, which actually speaks of several other things also. But the Chinese, whenever they are accused of their animated presence in Africa, always are fond to tell some of the stories that they talk about. Some things might be true or might not be true because history is always constructed. So, because they would say that the ocean that they are also part of, that the whole ocean belongs to them. So, they are capable of telling because it's part of the history also. So, they say that their relation with Africa goes to the Ming dynasty during 1418 to 1433. So, one of the famous Chinese scholars says, the Chinese did not colonize Africa. They took not an inch of land, not a slave, but a giraffe to the emperor to admire. That says that they are indirectly answering some of the questions that we did not come and colonize. You people had colonizers till 1974, Portugal. That was the last one. So they said that you had every other power coming to this particular continent and doing. We haven't done so. We haven't taken anybody as slave. Those countries which are talking about human rights, those countries which are proposing those noble models of governance, they've all indulged in inhuman activities, but we are not so. That's what the explanation that comes from there. Africa, to a large extent, also resists what Kennedy famously said once, rising tide lifts all the boat, which actually contributes to the hegemonic stability theory that we study in international relations. That means that I would continue to be the superpower or sole superpower, and I want to continue to be the same. So along with me, along the way, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. So that means there is a status quoist attitude that has come in. So nobody wants in this 21st century a status quoist power to continue to stay. So probably that's another statement which adds to a lot of things that we talk about Africa itself. Some of the parts have been already spoken by Dr. Pratyahari, so I would restrain if I'm doing so, but still the fruit of cultural revolution reached its zenith with Tanzania-Zambia railway project that came up in 1975. But the real leap happened. That's one of the reasons why I said that it took a different proposition or the position altogether post Deng Xiaoping, because this particular individual, small in stature, but the vision is for actually millenniums. So that's the capacity of a personality. So till his visions came into the real life, till then actually it did not go in a very great way. As long as Mao was there, then the Gang of Four came in, then the whole approach had to change, and it started changing too. According to Development Assistance Committee study of the OECD in 1984, China was the 8th largest donor in sub-Saharan Africa, not far below from Japan and UK. Between 86 to 95, China directed an average of 57% of its foreign aid to Africa. That speaks volume again. So how much they have concentrated in Africa and what they have done so. Scholars say that China's increased visibility in Africa is not animated, but should be seen in the context of China never left. That's what they have been trying to say, that we have been there for a long time. Most of the people from the West or the media from the West have been accusing China in a way that suddenly it has come into place and it started talking about all these things. So suddenly a negative aura has been created against China. I'm not trying to defend China, but I'm also trying to say that we need to think or look at the things more objectively rather than accusing a power which is doing at least something. So it's needless to say that China's hallowed foreign policy principle, which like how we talk about our Panchsheel, they also attribute it to Zhou Enlai. They speak in most of the African literature saying about non-interference in internal affairs has been coined under the word sovereignty trap. That means, in a way, by saying that one, you are indirectly saying that you are not going to be interfering, but your activities would drag in people to be in that one, but you continue to talk about it in a rhetoric. That's what it's all about. So the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, that's FOCCA, I think quite a few of them have spoken already, in October 2000 was attended by 44 foreign ministers from Africa. But whereas in our case in 2008, India-Africa Summit in Delhi attracted merely 14 African head of state and senior government leaders as compared to 48 who had been in Beijing 2 years earlier than that. So where is the priority that's going in? That's what I wanted to talk about. If you come into the China's presence in Africa, it's often spoken like since last morning's inaugural address to everything, mining and resource hunt has been very, very important. It's been offshore as well as onshore. So that's the concentration it's looking into. Infrastructure development, trade, commerce, and cultural centers. When even Hu Jintao was there, he had promised that he would send 300 youths to teach Mandarin. That means somewhere they understood that there were several concerns that were shown in terms of China's presence, where they felt they need to make people also to understand what Chinese expect out of it. So that's been something, a success story that China has been trying to bring in there. This is something to do with Chinese leaders visiting. We can make comparison to any other country. You will see each of the Premier Li Peng, then you will go Jiang Zemin, then Zhu Rongji, then Wen Jiabao, then Hu Jintao. You will see this is something that's available, so probably anybody can look into. So the number of visits that were made by people year-wise. Chinese aid and agreement in the sub-Saharan African region from 2006-07, you can look into. Their presence is almost there in most of the places because I am not concentrated on the North African region as such. This is something yesterday itself it was spoken about. The Chinese involvement of the Chinese National Offshore Oil Corporation, then Chinese National Petroleum Corporation in many of these countries, which is extremely interesting. This is also a map which talks about proposed oil lines which are pending and some of the proposed oil lines which have been committed. You can see there from Juba to Lamu and Dar es Salaam to Mewara, then Berbera to Hilala. So you can see several of their programs that are there. Yesterday, Lake Alberta issue was already spoken about, Manendra. So many of these things I'm not dealing with. Now, there are some issues which have been extremely problematic, which put China into spot. First, corruption. I do agree, yesterday Ambassador spoke about it's not an exclusive phenomenon to China. It's a phenomena that's there every part of the world. Probably when somebody wants to target, this is one of the ways to probably. The other reason is also that China's covert measures are something that we don't come to know. Even whatever they publish in terms of the statistics and other things in the ministry are not guaranteed that they're exactly doing the same. In 2009, why I said it's not exclusive is also for the reason that two American companies, Halliburton and Kellogg Brown and Root, they paid $579 million in fines after being found guilty for paying bribes to Nigerian officials between 1998 to 2006 in pursuit of construction contracts worth $6 billion. So one can say that it's not just the the Chinese companies which are into trouble, but it's also the other companies. Whereas that was the same case, even the Chinese State Construction Engineering Corporation was debarred for 8 years by the World Bank, and then China Road and Bridge Corporation was banned for 6 years, but they had already got $400 million for the 15 World Bank projects in various countries. This was all given. So even it's not exclusive case with regard to China, but many of the countries are involved. Some come very open, some are not. On a very lighter note, Lee Rogu, the Exim Bank president, he said in 2007, in China we have a saying, if the water is too clear, you don't catch any fish. That's what he said. So that also says that they're admitting to a lot of things. The Export-Import Bank president was talking about it. The other issue is also of the democracy and human rights. Often China has been criticized, saying that when it expects a favorable regime in Africa for it to conduct its foreign policy and its trade and commerce and several other things that it wants to engage. But if someone looks up to China itself in terms of human rights and democracy or any of those things, it stands nowhere. So it's already into trouble. But needless to say, even from the African region, there were some statements which came, which said that as long as they are doing good to us, we are not bothered about. You can see Serge Momboli, ambassador from Congo Brazzaville, he said, China gave us tangible things while the West gave us less tangible, better governance. We need both. We cannot be talking just about democracy, transparency, and good governance. At the end of the day, the population does not have anything to eat, does not have water to drink, no electricity at night, industry to provide work. So we need both. People do not eat democracy. That's what he spoke about. So I think these statements, why I've taken most of the quotes from the African leaders is for the simple reason that what we are talking about, the countries, we are not part of either of them. We are not part of China, we are not part of Africa. So it's good to take the views that come from those people who have been facing it in day-to-day life. So that's one of the reasons that spoke about. With regard to arms trade, it's not specific to Eastern Africa, but the examples of Sudan and Darfur have given that the leader in Sudan was very, very close to, and they did not take any measure to. And they also feel that China, because just it's interested in trade, it ends up giving arms and it just wants the trade to continue. So in a way, they've also promoted hatred, they've also promoted violence. But it's not only this particular country, because Sudan has its own history of violence, so it cannot be attributed directly to just China for doing so. Probably it has perpetuated it a little more than what it was expected, but it cannot be attributed completely to China itself. Coming to good governance, again a loaded term, which has been proposed time and again. So one of the ways they have they have been accusing China, or the media and the West has been accusing China, is in the issue of Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, where they said that they have allowed him to, or they have supported him to continue in power for longer time just because they are not interested in anything to happen as such. So wherever they have a conducive regime, irrespective of what type of regime it is, they are okay to continue with. With regard to environmental concerns, I think this is one of the things that one needs to accept. And yes, China is in trouble. China is also is a country that has to feel responsible about it, that it cannot throw waste on somebody else, and it cannot do some things which are extremely inhuman, especially the labor standards. This is not exclusive to only the African workers. It happened so even for the Chinese workers. In 2008, there was an issue, and most of the Chinese workers came in protest, saying that the labor standards are extremely problematic, due to which the police had to come into picture. The forces were used, and two of the Chinese people even died in a particular issue. So then the issue of hydropower dams, their standards that they maintain, and concession for tropical hardwood and large rainforest plantations, road and large-scale mining. This is not the issue that that's plagued only Africa. Even in China, they had large dams. They had issues there also. Even we have issues with our land acquisition and other issues that are related to development as such, because there is a development dilemma that always comes in, because when we accept something, the present generation, we think that whatever is there enough, we don't need to do so, but there will be backlash which the next generation would say our previous generation did not have enough vision to go ahead and take it forward. In 2007, China's State Forestry Administration and the Ministry of Commerce released guidelines about consulting and compensating local communities, but it did not speak about if they flouted, what is going to happen about it. So you can say probably they're just trying to set standards, trying to talk about things that come in paper, but do not come in practice. If we come into the implications for India, on the positive side, declining impact of the Western powers, and there is scope of cooperation, and I think everyone spoke about it when we spoke about India-Eastern Africa relations, so resources, schools and colleges. Now we have to look for alternative help in terms of energy requirements and such other things. I think Africa as a destination. Mobilizing the countries from the region to form more friendly global order, because China has one typical attitude that it can manage with any global regime that is existing. That is one of the reasons it might be problematic in terms of its frequency with that particular country, but still it has a knack because it starts everything with market research, the word market research. So they do everything based on the requirement. One is aware that how Chinese can also produce high quality goods for US, they also produce goods for UK, they also produce goods for India, but there is a big difference in terms of quality because they have understood the market in a much, much better way than any other country. On the negative side, yes, it also going to lead us to zero-sum game situation. There are several places where both of us have bid for several things where we have lost and the Chinese have gained. Again, I said, coming back to one of the problematic issues of corruption, probably they can do it much faster. With regard to us, we have some political limitation in terms of democratic decision making, which would take us little longer than the Chinese because they have a very swift action in terms of taking decisions what they want to or where they want to engage. That probably is one of the important things. The other thing is of the conflicts that are going to come up again, probably where we end up doing something in terms of infrastructure, probably we may not get anything. So one has to be ready to even take the shocks that are going to come out of it. But needless to say, whenever one wants to get the fruit, probably there is some amount of strain also to be taken. So I think that's the rule of the day. So there is no way that we can escape also. Prior to I conclude, whatever I have understood or whatever has been understood by the world is this much only. Still at the end of the day, we would not come to the dragon, you stand around it, each one would interpret in their own way. One would say it's a rope, one would say it's a wall, one would say it's a tree, another would say it's a leaf. So still, there is a long way to understand what China is all about.